Knowles, you irrepressible rascal. How you doing?
I'm doing well.
So you wrote an article with actual words in it.
I'm as shocked as anyone.
It was quite good. If I had known that you could write like that, I'd have read your first book.
It is amazing because I got the show because I published a blank book, and then I also was asked to write this article by the Point magazine because of my blank book, which does not seem to be any correlation between those two things. But in any case, glad I could write it.
Yeah, no, and it actually was gracefully written and almost intelligent. I was shocked. I thought this must be different Michael Knowles. But your basic premise is that most great comedy now is actually on the right. And I know, of course, I knew you were referring to me. You didn't mention me. And don't think I was hurt.
Oh, they must have left it out or something. I'll call the editor. Yeah, I'll give him a call.
Yeah, please. But do you think that's true? Do you think that the right is actually the funnier side at this point?
Yeah, that is certainly true. And I think if you look at popular comedy now, you'd have to conclude that. You could even ask Jerry Seinfeld, no strong right-winger, no conservative himself. He won't play college campuses because the kids are too PC there. But there's also a distinction to be made. I think conservatives are funnier. It's hard to identify conservative comedians because they want to work.
They need to keep their heads down. There's no question about it.
Exactly. You can at least identify non-leftist comedians like I think of Norm Macdonald as an example of this. I don't know that he's conservative. I don't know that he's a Buckleyite, but he's certainly not a leftist.
Right.
And he's the best comedian around. Dennis Miller's another example of that. Jim Norton. Other guys who just aren't.
And Louis C.K., his latest Netflix thing, had some stuff about abortion that really blew my socks off. And by the way, just to mention it, Jerry Lewis he was a Trump supporter and a Reagan supporter as well.
Now I might finally like him. I'm with you. He never appealed to me. Right. So I think that is true. I think they are funnier. But more importantly, I think that the sense of humor in the country resides entirely on the right. I remember one time you had said that you were asked why conservatives aren't funny, and you said it's because leftists don't have a sense of humor.
Yeah, that's why we're not funny, is because they won't laugh at themselves. Yeah.
Exactly, and that I think is it. I think that comedy essentially requires truth and hope. I think that there has to be those two elements. I think it's evident from Henny Youngman's one-liners, "Take my wife, please," all the way up to Dante's comedy, where you begin in the pit of hell and you ascend all the way up to heaven. And I think you need truth and hope. And nobody ever says he's expressing what we're all feeling. People say he's saying what we're all thinking, because it's funny because it's true, right? And on the left these days, not only do they despair, not only do they not have hope because of their materialist worldview, but they deny truth altogether.
Well, I think you make a point that is, if what you are saying is not true, but simply virtue signaling, then somebody who makes fun of it is not just attacking your ideas; he's attacking your very self. He's attacking your virtue, basically.
That's exactly right. And so you can't, there's nothing outside of you. There's nothing that you can stare at and laugh at as an absurdity. Rather, it is attacking you. And also, if you're simply virtue signaling, if you're constructing these fantasies, if you refuse to acknowledge the tragic fact of life, the fallen nature of the world, then you can't tell a joke about it because people aren't seeing what you're pretending to see. We all have eyes. We can all see the world, and you can only pretend for so long.
But you also mentioned, in my memoir, which does have words in it, I guess I just want to say, I'm not comparing, not competing, but I just want to say
I'm trying to work my way up. You've written all these books with words. I've written like 4 pages, so I'm going to try to slowly but surely work up to that.
But in my book about my conversion, The Great Good Thing, I talk about the fact, one of the things I talk about was that the comedy at the heart of the tragic world convinced me that we were fallen, that we were in a fallen state, that there was something better that we knew we could be, that makes it funny when we suck. It's like when we are evil, when we sin, we're like a guy in a tuxedo who's slipped on a banana peel and fallen into a puddle, because we know we're meant to be closer to the angels.
And Ronald Reagan echoed this exact point. It's in a poem that he wrote when he was 17. I saw a copy of it up at the Reagan Library, but the poem's called Life, and it says, I wonder what it's all about and why we suffer so when little things go wrong. We make our life a struggle when life should be a song. And it goes on and echoes a point that you've made before, which is that suffering and sin would be funny if not for the pain of it, if not for the suffering,
sure, yeah.
because it is an absurdity. And even I think Shakespeare gets to this as well. When Hamlet is feigning madness, he says that he's lost all of his mirth. I have of late,
Yes.
but wherefore I know not, lost all my mirth.
Right.
And it appears to me, he's feigning madness here. It appears to me what Shakespeare is saying, no less a comedian than Shakespeare, is that hope inheres in truth. The sign of sanity is not despair and anger, but it's delight, it's joy. And we see that in people who don't have this left-wing, materialist, reductive worldview. I think it's easier to laugh at the world even when you're looking at painful things.
You know, it really is. Before you came on doing some show prep, I was looking at all the comedians out there, and of course, one of the things that it really bothers me is that we have all these late night comedians, and every single one of them is an anti-Trump left winger. Every single one. And when Jimmy Kimmel? No, not Jimmy Kimmel. It was Jimmy Fallon,
right?
Who was nice to Donald Trump. They basically browbeat him into apologizing for it. And when you look at them and you see what they do, Stephen Colbert, who used to be pretty funny, just making fun of us, making fun of right wingers, but he was funny. He does this thing now where it's all F you, Donald Trump, F you, it's just that's over and over and over again. And then the crowd goes wild. Oh, what a radical thing to have said. Yeah. What an amazing, breakthrough in comedy styling that you would tell the president of the United States, F you, like
such creativity in language.
Such creativity, the use of language. And you just think like, really? How do you sleep at night doing that kind of stuff? It's not even good blue material, it's just bad stuff.
And I think now he used to be funny during the Obama years because he had his old show where he was playing a character, and because we could laugh at him and therefore laugh at ourselves. But there's something because politics takes on such a religious fervor for, I suppose, some people on the right, but I think predominantly for the left, they just can't laugh. So everything is amped up. We saw this under Bush too. Everything becomes mean and hysterical and unfunny. Whereas when they have their president and they can basically take a breather, they have the time and the brain space to make a joke and laugh at themselves.
As long as they're not laughing too much at their own ideas.
Exactly.
All right, Michael Knowles, the host of the Michael Knowles Show, because as I explained, we didn't use ZipRecruiter.com, so you got it.
So I was wonderful. I was just so happy you were walking around outside that lunatic asylum, because otherwise I don't know where someone would have found it.
The show is great, and I'll talk to you later. Thanks for coming on.